cho dẫu bây giờ là quá khứ.
Turn to part 3. You will hear 3 different. In each talk or lecture there are 5 questions, C or D. You hear the talks or lectures only once. Now open your questions paper and look at talk or lecture 1. You now have 35 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
I was a small child when I left home and moved with my family to live in America. For me and my little brother, it didn't take long before we felt American. But for my parents and to story, the biggest problem for my mom living in New York, and although there were families near us, they didn't work in the stores. This meant my mother had to take me with her when she went shopping, and I was usually at school. For my father, the most important thing when we arrived was to find a job. Luckily, he had friends who knew us in Vietnam, and they helped him get a job in a factory. It was hard for him to do that sort of work. In Saigon, he had been a doctor. My 2 older sisters went to high school. They worked hard and gave them extra English lessons. Even now, though, they speak accents. My brother and I are lucky. We may lose a way of life very different, her sisters and brothers, and looking after her mother and father. She feels quite lonely now. She says that in America you live inside your house, but you take your house outside onto the street, share your life with everybody. I don't remember that, but I do find the winters are quite hard to put up with in New York. It's very cold and snows a lot. My mother still wears traditional Vietnamese clothes at home and noodles. I must admit, I prefer burgers and chips. Although my friends like to visit us, I often feel a bit embarrassed by my parents' way of life. They don't understand Americans, and I think I am more American than Vietnamese now. I see it's sad for them to have such a strange daughter.
Now open your question paper and look at talk or lecture 2. You now have 35 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start.
In American schools, almost every classroom is a mix of boys and girls. However, it was not always this way. In the past, schools did not teach girls subjects like science and math. In 1972, a law called Title IX was made in America. It gave girls, though, some schools are reconsidering separating in the past. However, girls still learn the same subjects as boys. They just study without boys in the classroom. Why? Well, scientists know that boys and girls learn differently. They also behave differently in the classroom. Boys are louder and more confident. They like to talk and show what they know. In general, girls are quieter. They prefer to listen and think carefully before they give their answers. When boys and girls are together, the boys can be too dominant. Girls can bother each other instead of together. In a separated classroom, better and can focus on studying. Another reason for separated classes is that boys and girls often like different things. For boys' English class, the teacher can choose books that will be interesting to boys. They will be more excited about the stories. Not all the classes are subjects, like English, math, science. Some teachers think that separate education is not good. They worry that boys and girls will not learn how to work well together. Right now, less than 600 schools are trying separate classrooms. Time will show if it is a good idea or something that should be left.
Now open your question paper and look at Talker Lecture 3. You now have 35 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Hi, I'd like to welcome all of you to the International Student Orientation at Norwalk College. I hope that your travels from your home country have been easy and that you are all settling in well. I believe I've met everyone, but just in case, I'm the Director for International Student Affairs. The problems with your classes, your housing, visas, office. We'll have several short workshops, and we'll be talking about some common issues that international students face. The first one that I want to deal with is about communication and communication. Now, all of you have been studying English vocabulary, and you probably know all about verb tenses from a menu, but communication is verbal. That is, talking is not the only language we use to communicate. Another way we communicate is through nonverbal communication, or body language. The term body language means the movements we use and the facial expressions we have, like smiling or frowning, the way we sit, or the way we touch or look at someone, the distance we stand from another person. Some psychologists say that more than 60% of our communication is actually done through body language. We do it without thinking or without ever having been specifically taught what the gestures or expressions mean. The problem is that body language, and this can often cause some problems with. Here's an example. In many places, it may be a little rude or disrespectful to look at another person directly in their eyes as you talk with them. So many international students will avoid this eye contact. But in America, we accept it. We think of eye contact as a sign of honesty and straightforwardness. American parents actually encourage their children to look people in the eye when speaking. Just imagine a conversation where an international student was trying to be respectful by not looking into the eyes of her American classmate. The American might wonder why her classmate wouldn't look directly at her, and the international classmate would be wondering why she was being stared at. The end result is an awkward and frustrating interaction. One. Americans shake hands firmly when they greet each other because to Americans, a firm handshake signifies strength and power. Limp handshake is considered a sign of weakness. In cultures, handshakes are less common. A soft handshake is acceptable. So students need to know that when shaking hands, it's important to be firm. In America, a thumb raised in the air.
That is the end of part 3. Now you have 5 minutes to check your answers and transfer your answers. Turn to part 3. You will hear answer lectures. In each talk or lecture there are 5 questions. Question: choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. You will hear the talks or lectures only once. Now open your questions paper. Lecture 1. You now have 35 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Listen carefully.
I left Vietnam and moved with my family to live in America. For me and my little brother, it didn't take long before we felt American. But for my parents and 2 older sisters, it was a different story. My mother was the language. We were living in New York, and although there were quite a lot of Vietnamese families near us, they didn't work in the stores. This meant my mother had to take me with her when she went shopping, and I was usually at my father. The most important thing when we arrived was to find he had friends who knew us in Vietnam, and they helped him get a job in a factory. It was hard for him to do that sort of work. In Saigon,